build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Well, they gave me ball, but I can see between to a dusty yard and a long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone. I'm sober as good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Longbangers. This is episode 154, 154 in all money. I hope everybody's been enjoying the celebrations this weekend. Oh, I can't remember what everybody was fucking celebrating. Something fucking pointless, no doubt. Anyway, we've got an extra day off, or 2 days off, depending on where you work. So we'll take that. John, how are you doing?
Doing really good, thank you. I've had quite a nice weekend so far.
Do you got the bunting out?
No, did I fuck? I stuck the finger up at everybody bunting that I saw.
It's funny, we've got none on our street, and I was coming out onto the main road, and there's like a house just directly opposite the junction that's got all the bunting, and I think my exact words were, weird cunts. And that was it. I was like, fuck it. Just let them be. Let them enjoy it if they want to, but fucking hell. How about you, Colin? How's your street looking?
Aye, all right. I think the couple of the doors up maybe had something on the go last night in their garden, but I'm not sure. We couldn't. They had folk round, put it that way, but I couldn't see because there's trees in the way. But I think the boys in the army and that, so I think he probably swore an oath.
Probably.
Was there any late night renditions of God Save the Queen?
Not that I heard of. Apparently that's number one though, in the church.
Is it?
Oh, I thought it was Prince Philip's and Nons.
Was it? I thought it was the Sex Pistols that made it.
I don't know. I don't know. No, followed the charts. I didn't watch any of the concert or that. Apparently, Rod Stewart massacred Sweet Caroline as well.
Anything all weekend. It's been great. I've actually had the TV on. It's just been good to just avoid that. I saw like the big uproar about the Lee Mack joke, and you think, is that it?
What was the joke?
Yeah, so he was standing in front of the Buckingham Palace gates, and he says, "Oh, welcome to the party. Oh, it's the first time in ages we can say the words party and gate with and mean it a good thing." That was it.
Fuck. Okay.
Because Boris Johnson was there, that was and I quite like Lee Mack. He's quite funny, but like, is that it? Like, you've not got Jimmy Carter, Frankie Boyle up there to like get a proper go at it.
Aye, if you're going to do it properly.
And it was off. He did say that was no an auto cue, by the way. So I think he just did off the cuff or pre-prepped it, but no in the script, because it wouldn't have probably got past the sign-off stage.
Aye. So yeah, everybody was having a bit of moan about the BBC editing out the booze for Boris Johnson as well. Fucking anyway, that's no for this. A Hibs podcast. Just need to remember that we will be talking tonight about our Zoom call with other Hibs podcasts. When was that? Monday? Tuesday, with Lee Johnson. So we're going to go and dissect some of the stuff that he talked about, kind of give our views on it. The other thing, and I'm just finding the information for Hibs now, is we Hibs confirmed their coaching team set up today as well. And I had it in front of me, and it's just kind of got a bit. Anyways,
managers here.
You got it there.
McAllister and Adam won.
And did you read the wee bit about them? The wee bit of blurb about them the Hibs put?
Started reading it, I'll admit, but I mean, I'm like, I ken it's no many words, but it did appear to be too many words.
There was no pictures.
I read big books in that, but see, when I see big posts on a message board or on a web page, I'm just like, scroll past. Who's the next one? You know what I mean? Just scroll to see his photo.
Are you one of the guys that goes like straight to the bottom for the TLDR? Too long, didn't read.
Aye, 100%. I struggle in the forums when folk put big posts up. Like, I scroll past it, and I know there's probably good stuff in here. Sometimes I'll look at who the poster is to go, well, I read it, because normally they've written good stuff before. But when you see too many words, even if it has got paragraphs in it, it's like that.
Paragraphs, good grammar and punctuation. Like, aye, you've put the effort in, but fuck it.
Aye. Do you ever disregard the point because the poor grammar of that though? I do.
Have been noted.
Yeah.
Right. Well, We will. This is from the Hibs website, so we're lifting and shifting from it. Right? So we will give them full credit. This isn't our work. So Jamie McAllister joined as assistant manager, 44-year-old Glaswegian. Don't hold that against him. He's begun work at the club immediately, having joined Lee Johnson's backroom team. He's got a strong relationship that stems from the playing days at Bristol City, which is a euphemism for, or not a euphemism, rhyming slang for.
Okay.
Correct. And is since going into their coaching careers, played over 650 professional games before hanging up his boots. His first route into coaching was at Ashton Gate, becoming the Robins under-23s coach, before he quickly progressed to assistant manager under Lee Johnson. They enjoyed continuous progression at Bristol City, both on and off the park, before lining back up when Johnson was appointed to Sunderland with the Black Cats, who won the club their first trophy in 14 years. And then Adam Owen. I'd never heard of Adam Owen. I had heard of Jamie McAllister. Adam Owen, his CV's, he's 41-year-old, right? And you read through where he's been and what he's done. It's pretty impressive. A manager and coach with vast experience in a number of countries around the world, Adam Owen also arrives at Hibs to bolster Lee Johnson's coaching staff. The 41-year-old Welshman joins the club from Polish side Lech Poznan. Lech Poznan? Lech? Which is it?
Potato.
Right. Where he has operated as technical advisor since 2021. His coaching career began at Wrexham while still playing before moving to Celtic in 2003, where he worked under Martin O'Neill and later Gordon Strachan as a fitness coach and academy coach. He would later go on to become performance director at Rangers, where he would win 3 league titles, 2 Scottish Cups, 3 League Cups, and reach the final of the UEFA Cup in 2008. Owen worked for the Welsh FA between 2008 and 2018 and was part of Chris Coleman's backroom team that reached the semi-finals of Euro 2016. He also enjoyed coaching roles in China and the US and was manager of Polish side Lechia Gdansk between 2017 and 2018. And there's David Gray as well, who we know about.
Do you see what I mean, though, about too many words?
There's a lot. I missed bits as well. I missed bits. Skip through it. Paraphrased.
The really important question about Adam Owen and his time at Rangers. Did he have an EBT?
I didn't say. Read it between the lines. I would guess
like
not.
No, it was a bit earlier on than that.
I think he was paid by the books rather than...
Because he was at Celtic when EBTs were going on by the sounds of that. So you got Celtic to Rangers, eh? That was a bit under the radar, eh?
Aye. And if you kind of say he's no coached at a high level, I mean, talk about European finals, the Euros, the semi-final of the Euros with Wales.
So was he coaching? Did they say UEFA Cup final with Rangers? Like, was that where Walter Smith was manager?
Aye, he would have been there with Walter Smith.
He was coaching then.
He was performance director, so. I mean, it's an interesting title. I'm not sure what performance director does. I mean, you could say directs performance, right? That's the obvious answer, but I don't know exactly what that entails.
It sounds like directed of football on a different guys when they've made the last one redundant. They need to change the job title a wee bit to get somebody else.
Do you think that's why he's listed as another assistant manager, but actually fills a different role?
I wonder if he's more on the scouting side than that.
Could be.
It's certainly, I don't think that's us being dicks. Like, that certainly sounds like from his background, that seems to be the fit for his role. Well, that would make. I know what I'm trying to say. No one else does, but his qualities, his experience would tend to suggest that that's the role that he's going to fulfil rather than assistant manager.
But you know what? The clubs have, like, see clubs down south. I didn't know this till recently, but they have more than one assistant manager. It's a done thing. Like, if you look up Newcastle's assistant manager list, there's about 6.
That's mad, isn't it?
They can't all be assistant managers, like at least not in the traditional sense.
But see, I had that argument that, like, the high school my kids go to, they've got 6 deputy heads, and I'm going, no, you know, you can only have 1 deputy. In my opinion, the rest are assistant heads or something, because you can't have 6 deputies. Because if the head teacher goes off sick, who's in charge? Oh, she's a fucking deputy head then, and that would be the same with the manager.
Yes.
But Newcastle have got 6 because I looked it up recently because my brother-in-law had one in the taxi. He says he was a chief scout or something, but when you looked him up on Google or on the wiki or whatever, comes up as assistant manager, and then you look at it and you go, fuck, they've got 6 of them. But obviously 6, one will be like throwing coach, defence coach, attack coach, scout, But they're all classed
Oh,
as
so is
assistant
this
managers.
like this must be in the same sort of lines as assistant referees then? Like they're all officials, but there's only one main man.
Yes.
Maybe.
Go with that.
Right. I still
Um,
know what I'm trying to say, but still no one else does.
Do you want us to move on, John?
Well, you remember like they used to like it was referees and there was linesmen.
Mhm.
Aye, that's where I'm going to leave it.
What your whole point was, there was referees and there was linesmen.
So now you've got referees, you've got assistant referees, and you've got a fourth official. So it's all the same job. It's just different names, and you've got different. Colin was saying, you've got guys that are in charge of one thing, but they're listed as an assistant manager, but they're not a traditional assistant.
What's it done in the office? No, you're not the assistant manager.
Or they're assistant to the
Assistant to the manager. Aye.
clear as mud.
Well, I quite like the fact that they've worked together for a while. I don't know what the relationship is with Adam Owen, how they got him on board, but he definitely looks to be quite impressive based on how Hibs have set out his achievements. Quite a good CV. But I think it's good that Jamie McAllister has come in because him and Lee Johnson obviously trust each other.
Yeah.
And know how each other work, which
they done well at Bristol City, didn't they? I mean, I'm sure this season I went to one of the games. I was working down there a fair bit, and I went to a QPR Bristol City game, and they were pushing for the playoffs one year, which isn't really like Bristol City. They're usually sort of relegation area of the Championship.
Yeah.
And they had that the season had under them. They were definitely 6th, 7th, pushing for it. So they've done well. But it's funny, did you hear Andy Dawson the other day on a Top Flight Time Machine, and they were talking about football analysis, and you just watch football, I analyse it, and all that kind of debate and all that shit. And he said, I don't need to analyse football to know that when Lee Johnson came into Sunderland, he was a shite manager. And I thought, how? Because you were fucking second or third when you got rid of him. Like you had to then get a new boy in to just scrape you to the playoffs. But that was his analysis of it. Interesting for another fan's point of view.
Aye, interesting. Well, we shall see. Anyway, we'll speak of Lee Johnson, and we had the pleasure of sitting down, say, with other Hibs podcasts on Tuesday to speak to Lee and ask some questions to him. We had about an hour. So, John, you had a chance to listen back. You had unfortunately weren't able to make it. What were your observations after having listened?
That's a good question.
Thanks.
So I think Hibs fans have heard enough sort of opening interviews and whatever guys, whether it was through club officials or whether it was the most recent ones through like the podcast or whatever. And we've heard a lot of sort of pleasantries, and we've kind of thought like you get the usual chat about like folk buying in, folk getting really excited and blah blah blah. Like it all came across like really well, but none of that really matters unless it kind of transforms into results on the pitch. That being said, like I thought it was, I'd said, I did a wee review kind of thing on Twitter afterwards, and I said like see more than just like getting the opportunity to hear from the Hibs manager. You got to hear from Lee Johnson, the person, and I think he came across as really quite personable, and I thought he came across with some really clear ideas about what he wanted to do when he's in charge of Hibs.
Well, what were your thoughts on Lee and how he kind of came across on the podcast? Because we both of us were on it. So, how did you feel about him, sort of before and after?
So before, I tried to have an open mind, like I've said before, but I thought he came across quite well. I think a lot of folk liked he'd obviously researched the history of the club and all that kind of stuff. Some folk did, like I don't suppose some folk don't care, but a couple of folk have told me that they've kind of buying into him a wee bit because that's what they like. So they're appreciating the time he's taking to do that. I thought he spoke well. I thought the questions were reasonable. I know I've seen a few folk on the forums and that saying they never give him a hard enough time, but it's like he's not really made any mistakes yet. So I was couldn't really take him to task for no signing any players because he signed 2, despite the window sort of being shut on that. I couldn't really think. I don't know. I think the questions were good for everybody that was on it, for the other 3 podcasts as well, and I thought he answered them quite well, and he was positive and upbeat and quite interesting. I thought the 4884 thing was interesting, and I think it's good to know that he obviously rates Nisbet, and Nisbet will probably get a bit of confidence for, it's like if you got a manager that comes in that you already know, you're a wee bit like, or
Yeah.
know off anyway. I'm sure I've spoken, haven't they, previously, so I think that's good, although we've got a long time to wait for Nisbet to come back still, unfortunately. But I thought he came across really well.
The 4-8-8-4, do you think it was a wee bit naive to think that we'd get that formation on the pitch, though?
I probably need it. Imagine that at Tynecastle,
No room. Obviously, I'm joking.
It's quite logical, the way, really. Like, if you think about it, it's quite a logical sort of approach to take. And it's probably what a lot of folk have done before. They've just never said it.
It's never been articulated that way.
Yeah.
What I liked about it, right, and I would say this was probably the same for quite a few. There were other examples of this through the interview. But when he answered that question, he knew the answer. He wasn't blagging it or thinking on the spot or like, kind of, this would be good. He'd researched it. It's like, I think he referenced a study or, this is the best setup for it. And I think when you have that kind of way of looking at things and it becomes a bit more deliberate, there's more chance of happening because you understand why you're doing it. So you start to kind of build towards that model. Because I think it kind of reflected that we probably didn't have the right balance at the moment.
Yeah. And we've not, have we? But you look at it around, it's probably been explained before as like two players in every position, but a youth, you've got a youth guy pushing an experienced guy, but actually that's 22 players.
Yeah.
So it's still 24. So it's a couple more, but it probably works in the same way. It's just it's easier to understand, isn't it? I think, like, you go, in my mind, it feels a logical sort of boxes.
Do you think if you were a player listening to that, you would be sitting going, oh, fuck, where am I?
Well, you would immediately, wouldn't you? When you would know right away as well, because you know what age you are. So
aye, this is true.
So that's why it makes it. That's why it's so logical and simple, isn't it?
Yes. What about you, Joe?
No matter you used to play pushing the first team player, I'm a first team player. Now you're just in one of the four boxes.
But John, I wanted to ask you, he did his homework on Hibs. He talked about the history, but he'd also he knew some of the players. Like he said, he joked. He'd made three or four illegal approaches for Nisbet. He also spoke very well at Porteous. Said he'd been to see the club for a couple of games as well. What did you think of all that kind of chat from him?
It was interesting, the fact that he'd been up for the Livingston and Dundee games?
Yeah,
probably two and most performances in definitely in the bottom six, but maybe two off the season.
He mentioned that he was in the Livy end. I think there was maybe a joke about a disguise or whatever, but to be honest, like, if Lee Johnson had sat beside me at the football within the last 6 months, I wouldn't have known who he was. And I didn't mean that to be disrespectful. I'm just quite inward looking at times. But the chat about the players, so you mentioned Kevin Nisbet and Ryan Porteous there, but I think he also mentioned Dougie Tripod, although he didn't refer to him as Dougie Tripod because he's not quite as up to speed with player nicknameship. But I think I got the impression, if I remember rightly, that when he was talking about Dougie Tripod, for example, he mentioned about him, like, his youth in terms of where he would fit into that 4-8-8-4, but he also kind of made like a wee bit of I don't know if it's dispensation's the right word, so he was saying like he's probably one of the more experienced players now. And he also mentioned that I think that he's one of those players that could also be looking, not that Dougie Tripod will be looking to move, but he's also going to be on the radar of other clubs. So it's all kind of positive but interesting because he mentioned, I scribbled down some notes. So he mentioned that there's quality in the squad. So he mentioned that season before last we finished third, and some of those players are still here. He mentioned that we're kind of a bit weak in the final third at the moment, and he's going to look to change that either through recruitment or tactically. But it does kind of demonstrate that he has done his homework on the squad. It's not just kind of coming. He's not just kind of. You mentioned it before. Like, none of it seems like he's blagging it. It all seems very deliberate. Mm-hmm. And like you say, that kind of suggests that it's got more chance of success with that deliberate approach.
Corey mentioned that he listened to the podcasts. as well. Think you'll continue to listen, having met us all?
Be interesting if he did actually listen in the first place. But maybe he has. If he was doing research, maybe he has.
Be an interesting. I took it at face value, but I think it'd be like an interesting insight to take. See if you were taking over a club, to go and listen to what supporters were, or some supporters. Obviously, we're not all supporters. We're just three. But to have that kind of I tune in to say kind of what's the pulse, because I think he mentioned the disconnect as well, didn't he? Like between the support, and he was very your question, Colin, about how would you sell the season ticket to my wife, pretty much.
How did Mrs. W respond to Lee Johnson's elevator pitch?
Oh, she had a wee moan. I hadn't asked it correctly. She was wanting to ask more about the cost of living crisis. I said, it's not really the place. But aye, so no, it was aye, she listened. She's still not renewed yet, but I will see. I can't even remember what he said, because it was quite a long answer.
Oh, he mentioned about how important, he said, like, Hibs need you, and it's important, and it was about that kind of fans playing their part, and about seeing the team kind of wanting to go out and win, but like kind of everybody in it together was the general crux of the answer, I think. It's interesting, right? Because Sean Maloney mentioned that as well, didn't he? Like, it was one of the things that he'd said he wanted to get the fans on board, and had mentioned, like when we interviewed him, he mentioned about the fans had been terrific with him, and I think by the end of Sean's time, the fans weren't really that terrific with him. The fans had been terrific with some of the players during that time as well, which kind of got called out by the newspapers and stuff. When it was Jared and James Scott when they came on, I can't remember the game, but they got pelters. Other than the very basic answer, calling of winning games, how does a manager go about getting fans on side?
Well, I think apparently it's playing good football. I think that would draw people back, even if we were maybe losing games. I know people like be smashing their iPhone and that, but that's kind of the way it goes at Hibs, isn't it? I mean, like even with Mowbray, when it was good, and it was good every week, it wasn't good every week, right? But that's the perception you've got now looking back at it. The football was good. You were chucking fucking 4-0s in with Dundee after being 4-1 up, and you were getting maybe pumped off at Hearts at Tynecastle and then hammering Livingston 7-0 at home or something like that. You know, it was like,
yeah.
But it was when you played well, it was good. You wanted to go and watch it every week. You actually look forward to it. I think that's kind of what, accompanied with winning games, or winning more than you lose, maybe the somebody did use that as a phrase. Was it Mowbray?
Mowbray said, "Yeah, we'll win more than we lose if we play like that." We're more or less his words.
I think that's kind of it, because people were moaning in the lockdown season that the football wasn't good enough when we were winning. So just winning isn't good enough, right? That's because a comfortable third place finish in a cup final isn't good enough if you're not playing good football as well. Whether fourth place and semi-finals only or quarter-finals with playing good football is good enough, I don't know. But that's I don't know. Good football, that's what it is. It's going to be easy and eye.
You go along with that, John?
To a degree. I think I was just thinking as Colin was describing like the Mowbray football there, like looking back, and I know that we maybe gave, I think it was Tam McManus, I think he talked about Ross County having an identity. I think that he was wrong about Ross County having an identity, or at least from the outside looking in. And I mentioned before that I'm pretty
Mikey Stewart.
But Mikey Stewart, sorry.
Yeah.
Beg your pardon. Sorry, Tam. I'm not a Ross County fan, so I don't know that they have an identity as such. However, under Mowbray, which I think a lot of people hark back to, that was probably one of the best periods, with the exception of those 3 halcyon months under Neil Lennon. But the identity of that Hibs team was attacking football. Like, they were going to go out and they were going to try and win every game.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that was something that I picked up for Lee Johnson's interview, was that they're going out and they're going to be playing to win. And I want to say that he went on to say, "Oh, they're going to die trying," but I might be.
I think more or less did.
I don't know. I wasn't 100% sure because I didn't write that down and it sounded awfully similar to some 50 Cent lyrics. But that's got to be a good thing. Like, because I don't know. I don't know that I could argue the point that Jack Ross's side had an identity, like in spite of the fact that they went on to get third position. Like, I think that they were a counter-attacking side, but I don't know that that's an identity. And Sean Maloney wasn't here for long enough, and I think he had a really shite set of circumstances to try and build that identity. But I think something that would help Lee Johnson is having that identity of a team in terms of what they're going to do.
There was something he mentioned about playing the ball forward. He sort of said, I don't mean long, but it's like that.
Getting the ball forward early, he said.
Transition. So when you get the ball, your first pass is forward. Now, I think if you go back and watch, so I know we're talking about the Mowbray time quite a bit, but that was a feature of the Mowbray team. Like if you go back and watch it, very rare that we got the ball and the first movement was back the way it was tended to be in an attacking move. And he also mentioned about for the throw-ins having the tempo. So you've got this the idea of first pass is a forward pass, and then if the ball goes out to try and get it back in within 5 seconds. Now, when was the last time you saw us take a quick throw-in? Kind of consistently, or in an isolated incident like it is. Our throw-ins have been horrendous, but actually one of the biggest complaints of the football over the last couple of years is the amount of backwards passes that we've had.
Lee Johnson maybe referenced that in roundabout ways. Like, so he talked about getting the ball forward early, but not recycling the ball just for the sake of recycling the ball.
Yeah.
And I took that to mean like passing the ball across the back four, just because you can pass the ball. Like you say, there's no point having 83% possession if you didn't do anything with it, or words to that effect. In terms of throw-ins, and it amazes me that we've had as many managers as we've had, and there either hasn't been a focus on getting the ball back in play quickly from a throw-in, or we haven't had the players to do it. I've seen two mentioned recently that did it. John McGinn was apparently quite good. There isn't anything that sticks out in my head in terms of John McGinn and quick throw-ins, but I remember Grant Holt coming on in a game against Wraith Rovers, I'm sure. And it was like one of the first things he did as soon as he came on the park. I think he replaced Brian Graham. Brian Graham kind of huffed and puffed his way through that game. And one of the first things that Grant Holt did when he came on was take a quick throw in. And it was just like, get the balls out, get the ball, get it back in, move. And it seems so simple. And we haven't, there's been so many players that haven't done that. We are renowned as being shit at throw-ins.
It's mad. You've went back about 5 years recalling a throw-in, because that's how infrequently it happens.
2016 Cup final, we score eventually for a quick throw in, don't we? The ball goes out quick and then...
But we're always determined. So we're like, oh no, the fullback needs to take this throw in. So we wait on the fullback taking the throw in. Whereas anybody's allowed to take a throw in. You didn't wait on the fullbacks coming up to take it, which is what we always see we do, and that slows everything down. Everybody gets in position, and then you kind of get the guy to come in. So it's totally heavily marked. It's just frustrating, but then it's the way we've been set up for the fullbacks.
What about the comment Lee made about being later back from pre-season than he would have liked because he wanted to take the cup seriously? See, I don't know if you remember the season. Was it last season or maybe Jack Ross's first season? We kind of huffed and puffed a wee bit in the early League Cup round. So it must have been the season where we went in Europe because otherwise we would have skipped them. So Jack Ross's first season maybe. He got pelters, and there was a lot of discussion on the forums about them just being sort of like glorified pre-season games. It didn't really matter as long as you got enough points to kind of go through. By the end of the season, you're not going to be thinking about it because if you get to the final or whatever, then who gives a fuck? Which I think happened. Whether it's the final or the semi-final anyway. But
there was definitely difficulty in the pre-season that Heckenbottom had, and I think that was a lot to do with chopping and changing the players.
Yeah.
Or at least there were players that played in pre-season, and then when it came to the season kicking off proper, those players had been so Josh Campbell, Ben Sterling, for example, looked like they were going to be part of midfield, but were loaned out. So that kind of derailed any sort of continuity. And Lee Johnson talked about pre-season, having a good pre-season under your belt as being critical in terms of having the best possible chance of success. It is a wee bit. I was talking about this with my mate last night before we watched the Batman film, and he was saying that it was. I'm going to put this politely. So it was a bit of a head scratcher that Hibs were back so late. And obviously Lee Johnson mentioned that as well about the sort of limited time that he's got to get the players started in their pre-season.
How late is it? Is it not just like next week they're back or something? It's not like...
I'm not sure, but then our first games, is it this month or early next month?
Mid-July.
Mid-July, so I think it's that far till we've actually got a competitive game. And I think that's probably the point that he was making, is in an ideal world, he would have them back X amount of weeks before that first competitive game, because that's just what I took from that, is that's when he wanted the team to be ready. No,
he wants the most amount of time possible to implement his ideas within the squad.
It'll be interesting to see what happens next season if we're not in Europe then, because you're effectively not getting, you're getting the players like a fortnight off.
And then bringing them back.
That's what, because that's when the league. It's not his fault. Like, I get it. He wants 6 weeks.
Get a couple of weeks in January as well, don't they? Do you know, like how many?
You get a week. Do you know? Is it not just like fucking you finish up New Year's Day games and then you're off till?
Well, depends. They stretched out with COVID and that. Enough, I can remember. Aye.
We went to Portugal, didn't we? In a proper season with the break, so they're still training. They're just not playing. So, fine. Like, I get it. He won 6 weeks for them. You're not really got to get it, are you? Because when you've got a full season, so whoever it is that made the decision, I get why they made the decision, because you get to play some time off.
It is.
But then, if you give them longer off, is there the risk that the players maybe become a little bit less sharp and require more pre-season?
Aye, there is. And that's on them. That's personal responsibility, isn't it? And you mentioned that. They go away, they get a good programme to go away with. They go on holiday, they're still going to, if they're in fucking Dubai or Magaluf or whatever, they're probably still going out for a run when they're sweat the bevy at them and get a wee 5K in or whatever it is that they got given. And then there's still maybe a couple of weeks when they get back that it'll widen up. It's not like the old days when like John Clark at Dundee United standing with 1 foot on the scales trying to get under the limit. So Jim McQueen does the build them up to Ash. You know what I mean? It's like they all come back. They all know this is a job and they need to be fit. It's just in a case because they're not. I think he mentioned, did he not talk about his first pre-seasons? Graham Taylor just ran them into the ground. They don't do that. They'll all be out on the first day. We saw them fucking train the other week. It's just a wee kick about anyway.
Aye, that was a recovery session. It was in front of the fans. You think you could take too much for that, pal? Yeah, for some of them.
For half of them. But the and I get that, but I don't think. They're no. It's no heavy. It's no heavy training. You know what I mean? They'll come in fit. There's a ball. Let's run about. This is a style of play I want to play. But that's no. It's a couple of weeks. So what? And who have we got in the first round? Like the cup? Bonnyrigg, somebody else?
Honestly, can't remember.
So we don't even know what's important sports level you're putting on it, right? So we don't even fucking know who we've got. Falkirk, that's one. Bonnyrigg, Falkirk,
Clyde was one, and who was the first one? Was it Stirling or somebody?
So there you go, right? Like, it's no. I mean,
got a finger on the pulse, eh?
We shouldn't. But that's the thing, though. That's what I'm saying, though. We're talking about the sense of importance here. So
I'm just talking about the sense of importance in terms of him having the right amount of time. So, or sorry, not the right amount of time. Whatever amount of time is required for him to implement the changes at Hibs that he wants to make.
Early. They always come back the middle of June. This isn't a different decision that's been made. It's a League Cup that's been brought forward rather than the players getting longer off.
Morton was the other thing, by the way.
Has it been brought forward because of the World Cup?
It might have been, but it's not. It's always early July now, isn't it? But there is a change to the season because of the World Cup. I don't know, because the players will get time off, I suppose, at the end of the year because 9 year boys will be in the World Cup. But unless you've got any Welsh players, it's hot off the press.
We'll be signing them. We've not finished signing yet, Colin. You know, the kind of players that will be World Cup stars.
But we'll be looking at the World Cup to bring World Cup stars in, won't we? Because we'll be signing 2 World Cup stars after the. That's just what we do when you're in this kind of ownership model.
That's it. Just make the claim anyway. John, was there anything else that jumped out from the interview that you would want to kind of pick up and discuss?
Maybe actually just tying on to what you said there about like signing World Cup stars. So Lee had mentioned about recruitment, and he had a number of contacts, and he was looking at different ages across different regions. So that tends to suggest that we're going to see a fair bit of activity in the transfer market. I mean, we're going to need a fair bit of transfer activity because of the number of players that have been released or whatever. But it'll be. He also mentioned about the types of players that we need. They need to be tactically, technically, and physically capable of what he requires them. And I know that sounds really, really simple, but I think we've had square pegs and round holes, like because of the changes that we've seen over the last 6-12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be really interesting with the things that he talked about in the interview, the football that he wants to play, what the Hibs team's actually going to look like. I don't mean physically, like, you know, their facial, you know, their appearance or whatever. Just what is the Hibs team going to look like next season? It's weird as well because last season was shite. Like, it was an absolute write-off from pretty much after the game at Ibrox when Porteous got sent off. For whatever reason, like, we just fucking plummeted after that.
Mm-hmm.
But once the season ends, you kind of dust yourself off, and you start looking ahead, and you start feeling that wee sort of bit of excitement again. You know, I'd dragged my heels with the season ticket a wee bit more because of commitments outside of going to Easter Road. But now I've got the season ticket renewed. I'm just desperate to get back to Easter Road again to see Hibs run out in green and white again.
I'll be in bar membership as well. It wasn't just like you were like, the kid will get the season ticket, fucking all in.
I went all in now.
So it's as well. It's the strips green and white, the new home strip, yeah.
As we can reveal, imagine it's no. Imagine they came out and done that. Mind the fucking all green one that came out. That was one of the shittest strips we've ever had. That one. I mean, they said it was like a famous 5 throwback, and it was just like a plain dark green fucking t-shirt, but
it's a Puma t-shirt or something. Yeah.
And it had it was a marathon bet, but it was like a street sign, kind of almost like they just fucking ironed onto it.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the one when it still had it was the marathon bet red branding? So but then they managed to fix that for the next couple of years.
It was the big white bar behind it. So had the white background on the. It just looked terrible. Like that was
Stubbs' first season, maybe.
It would have been Stubbs' first season. We were in. We were in France. We were on holiday, and it leaked. I think it leaked like the day before. Somebody posted pictures on Hibs.net, and you looked at it going, "I can't be. That's a training top or something." There, and then they revealed it, and just like,
Lidblin.
Dire.
Do you think getting the strip right helps set the tone in terms of identity and managers and what have you?
I don't know, last season didn't really make any difference, did it?
I was going to say that I can't remember who it was. It said it was it Budgie on our WhatsApp group. It said the Quick Bag group said this season strips deserved better.
Yeah. But with that, so with last season's strip, it started off with Jack Ross and then finished with David Gray in charge with Sean Maloney cameo in between. But new season, new manager, new strip. Getting that right feels like it could be a semi-important part of the jigsaw.
Well, the strip have been decided like last Christmas when they went over. They would have. I mean, they used to fly Italy and that too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, aye. Greg was saying that he flew over to was it Florence? Was it somewhere in Italy?
Somewhere like that. Aye. Yeah. Well, the market the Hibs are going with all roads lead to Easter Road. That's the sort of branding on the season ticket campaign. If you think last season they had the street map, so I think what this one's going to do is in keeping with the all roads leading to Easter Road, it's just got a fucking traffic cones and temporary lights on it, and frustrated folk just kind of throwing their arms up in the air in their cars. That's how it'll be. That's my guess. I was
thinking like an ordnance survey map, but I like your description better.
Aye, fucking just road rage. Right. Lee Johnson, so anything else to pick up on? Colin, what other things did you come away with following that?
Yeah, all I can think of now that we've not spoken about is I described it to somebody at work. I was talking about it, and who hadn't heard that, who isn't a Hibs fan, and I says that when we spoke to Maloney in February or whenever it was, and we spoke or March, and we spoke to him then. The difference I thought was that they both probably gave similar answers, but Johnson was a bit more believable, if that's the right word to use. It was like he knew it, he had a bit of experience and knowledge, and he'd done it before and seen it before. Whereas Maloney's sort of out the textbook, maybe like so he believed his answer more than Maloney. That sounded too harsh on Maloney, but
nah, I don't think it is, and I think that's maybe reflected by the fact that Lee Johnston, despite his age, and I don't think he'd be that much older than Sean Maloney, has got 450 games under his belt. So we definitely have that experience.
They're similar ages, like maybe a year or two in it, I think. Because
obviously
he's 41. So
yeah, obviously their careers were different. I think Lee Johnston retired early because of an ankle injury, and Sean Maloney played on for quite a bit before going on to do his coaching stuff. But we've definitely got an experienced manager there.
Yeah,
can't have any complaints in that respect.
It's a really good point. And so he was obviously very credible. And that point you make there, right? So see when Maloney was talking about getting his ideas across to the players and things like that, and I can't remember exact phrases, but he felt like he had the concept, but didn't necessarily know how to make it into here so everybody can understand what I'm trying to do. I thought Lee Johnston, the way that he talked about it, you could see that he knows what he needs to say to the players for them to understand and carry out what he's needing them to do. It just seemed like a wee bit sort of less abstract and a bit more tangible with what he was talking about. I like the fact that he seemed to know what he was talking about in great detail, like the amount of preparation that he'd done for taking on the job, looking at the team. But the stuff, even that because I think we'd asked about the experiences that he'd had in other roles, what he'd learned. And somebody asked about, I think it was Strong Opinion guys, asked about which clubs he would aspire to, like having seen other folk. And he'd been in, so he's got a good experience with the City group. We've let him in and can see all of the different things that they do. But then he talked about Bielsa and Mourinho and I can't remember who else he name checked in it, but it just seemed to have that credibility. I would totally agree with that observation.
Good.
Aye. Good. Aye. Right, we're out of time for tonight. So overall, out of 15, how would you rate your optimism, John, for the new season under Lee Johnston after watching that and basing it only on that interview?
11.
Colin?
12.
All right, I'll go for 13 just because I like sequences. Right. Okay. We're going to record Longbangers Extra Time just now for subscribers. If you want to subscribe and hear more of this pish, you can do so. It's longbangers.hubwave.net. It's £3 a month. It's great value. It's like something like 30-40p an episode, if that, for all the stuff that goes on. So you can't fucking argue, like, it's less than your TV license and you don't have to put up with fucking Jubilee pish. So that's as much as I'm selling it tonight. Go and sign up, and we'll be back with short bangers through the week, so watch out for that. Until then, see you next time.
Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't drink what I know.